He was praised for being easy, not for being brave or honest, not for being himself, for being quiet when adults were tired, for being polite when the room was tense, and understanding without asking questions, but mostly for swallowing his feelings so no one else had to taste them. The adults loved that. They called him mature, smart, and good. But what they really meant was, he doesn't make our lives harder. They didn't say it like that, of course. They didn't even know they were doing it. They were not cruel. They had a good heart. But they were afraid. Afraid of life, of poverty and shame. Afraid of what the neighbors would say. And in a house built on fear, the child who causes no trouble becomes sacred. So he learned early, the safest way to be loved is to disappear. As a little boy, he could feel everything. He could feel when his mother's mood changed, before she even spoke. He could feel when his father was angry from the way he entered the room. He could feel when the air became heavy. And because he could feel it, he adapted. He became small. He learned to speak less. He learned to ask for less. He learned to take up as little space as possible, as if space was something expensive, something the family couldn't afford. And the strange part is, it worked. The less he needed, the more they praised him. The more he swallowed, the more peaceful the house seemed to become. And so the boy made a deal with life, a deal he didn't understand he was making. If I am easy, I will be safe. If I am quiet, I will be loved. If I do not disturb anyone, I will belong. But the child is not supposed to be easy. A child is supposed to be alive. A child is supposed to cry, rage, laugh too loudly, to ask for things, to break things, to be messy and inconvenient. Because that is how a child learns. I can be myself and I will still be held. But he didn't learn that. He learned the opposite. If I am myself, I will be corrected. Not gently, not with softness, but with shame, ridicule, and coldness. With that look in the eyes, that look that says, why are you like this? Why can't you just be normal? And so he became what every fearful home rewards, a child who needs nothing, the perfect son, the son who doesn't complain, doesn't demand, the son who doesn't embarrass the family, the son who understands. And the truth is, he did understand. He understood too much. He understood that his parents carried pain they never spoke about. He understood that they had been raised with harshness. And he understood that tenderness was not something they knew how to give. He understood that their love was real, but it came with conditions. Not spoken conditions, not intentional conditions, but conditions that lived in the walls. Conditions like, don't talk back, don't be weak, don't be strange, don't be too emotional, don't make us look bad, and above all, don't make us feel like we failed. Because that was the hidden rule. His parents did not fear his sadness. They feared what his sadness meant about them. They feared that if he was unhappy, it meant they were bad parents. And they could not carry that. They had already carried too much. So the boy learned to protect them. He learned to smile when he was hurting, to say I'm fine before anyone asked, to laugh at jokes that made him feel small. And slowly, quietly, he stopped asking for help. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being the good child, because everyone thinks you're okay. Teachers think you're okay, friends and family think you're okay. Even you start to think you're okay, because you're functioning. You get good grades, you behave, you don't cause problems, you don't fall apart. But inside there is a boy who is holding his breath. He did not grow up learning confidence, he grew up learning control over his voice, over his face, control over his needs and over his hunger. Not hunger for food, hunger for warmth, for softness, and hunger for someone to look at him and say, You don't have to be easy with me. You can be messy, you can be loud, you can be difficult, and I will still love you. But no one ever said that. So he became easy. And in becoming easy, he became invisible. And then he grew up, and he thought adulthood would free him. He thought, now I can live, now I can choose, and now I can breathe. But the body doesn't care about logic. The body remembers. So even as a grown man, he still felt that old fear. The fear that showing up for himself was dangerous. The fear that saying what he truly wanted could cost him everything. Because for the good child, love is not something you receive. Love is something you earn. He would sit with people who liked him, who were kind, people who were safe, and still his chest would tighten. Still his throat would close. Still his mind would search for the right words. The safest words. The words that don't cause conflict. The words that don't reveal too much. And the words that keep him liked. Because deep inside him there was still that little boy. The little boy who learned, if they don't like you, you die. Not literally, of course, but emotionally. In the child's nervous system, rejection feels like death, and he had been trained to fear rejection more than anything. This is what people don't understand about the good child. They think the good child is loved, is lucky, and strong, but the good child is terrified. Terrified of being too much, of being not enough, terrified of disappointing, and of being seen. Because being seen means being judged, and being judged means shame. And shame was the oldest language in his home. And one day he started to understand something. Something that made him both sad and free. He realized he was not born easy. He became easy because he didn't feel safe. Because his parents didn't know how to hold pain. Because in their world, children were not supposed to have needs. Children were supposed to adapt, obey, and to make the family proud. And so, slowly, he began to change the deal. He began to unlearn the contract he signed with life as a child. He began to practice something radical, taking up space, not loudly, not aggressively, just honestly. He began to say, I don't like this. I don't want this. This hurts me. I need time. I need softness. I need rest. And every time he said it, his body shook, because his body still believed that honesty is dangerous, that it will lead to punishment and abandonment. But something else happened too. Every time he stayed with himself, something softened. Every time he didn't disappear, a part of him came back. A part of him returned home, not to his parents' house, but to himself. And he began to love the boy that was never loved, the way he had deserved to be loved. A child who did what he had to do, who survived, and who deserved tenderness. And now, as an adult, he's learning something his parents never taught him. He's learning that love is not earned. Love is not a reward for being convenient. Love is not something you buy by shrinking yourself. Real love is simple. Real love says, you can be here, all of you. Even the parts that are loud, angry, sad, and messy. You don't have to disappear to be loved. And maybe one day, you will be fully real. And real is not always convenient. It takes up space, it has needs, real has boundaries and has a voice. And the boy is learning that this is not dangerous. It only feels dangerous because he grew up in a home that made him feel like it was dangerous. But he is not there anymore. He is here, and he is safe now. Even if his body still needs time to believe it. He was praised for being easy, but he is no longer trying to be easy. He's trying to be free. The more he stops disappearing, the more he becomes someone he can finally live with.